All right, cool. Well, welcome. We're in day 4 of the entertainment lockdown music industry chats. I want to welcome you guys for joining, the panelists and attendees included. I know you have so many other things to do, like go out and about, but thank you for joining and logging in and staying active. We'll have some Q&A at the end. If you want to ask any of us or you just want to chat, I can bring some people on video. We can make it a little bit more, social. People seem to like that, but today we're specifically talking about music publicity meets, I guess, online marketing. Just in general, just campaigns, like what the industry is doing right now, how it's affecting the way that you pitch in terms of ad campaigns and PR. And I've got 2 awesome people here today. So I'm just gonna intro each of you, and then I have specific questions for each of you as well, and then we'll just kind of open the floor, all right?
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, I've got Mark here. As he said, he's calling in from Amsterdam. He is the owner of Rockstone Creatives. This is a digital agency for the music industry, which focuses on how to generate reach for artists on social media channels. He assists them in creating successful ad campaigns that will attract the right audience, turning them into fans. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I have Marilyn. She is the founder and lead publicist with Present PR in New York. Right now, she's in, what'd you say, North Carolina?
Yep.
Gotcha. She elevates artists and brands with customized opportunities for the present climate. She has secured her clients opportunities with ABC, Billboard, Forbes, Sirius XM, and more. Welcome, Marilyn. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And we have me. I am the founder of Artist Collective. Those of you tuning in that have no idea who I am or what Artist Collective is, we are an artist development company that, helps craft artists' brands. A lot of times they're just starting from scratch and they're not really sure how to kind of take it. But today I'm just going to be your host of the panel today. So I got some icebreakers here just to kind of give us a bird's eye view, especially because, we have people from all over the world, just to give an idea like what you're dealing with, where you're located, and how this has directly impacted your day-to-day, just even in the past week. So let's start with Marilyn.
Yeah, like you said, I'm located, typically in Brooklyn, but I was telling them before all of this that I fled to North Carolina, so I figured New York isn't the best place to be currently, and unfortunately, and I have parents in North Carolina, so I am working from home until things improve. Luckily, working for myself, working from home really isn't a strange thing for me. I've been working from home for upwards of a year now, so nothing has really changed as far as my environment goes. It's a pretty cozy and familiar situation, but you're right, Evan, things have changed a lot, and I find, what I'm struggling with is being a little too informed. I think, we're getting immediate updates consistently in the media, and when you work in media, you tend to be very much, in tune with the flux of press and, news coming out. So yeah, it seems like things are changing drastically, and as far as how it's affected me and, my workflow, I am finding less of a response currently from journalists. That or a lot of journalists seem, it's tough. It's a very panicked time. So their editors are wanting them to specifically focus on coronavirus related news, which makes sense. I think that's what's on everybody's minds, and they want to keep it topical. So with that in mind, luckily my relationships with journalists are very communicative and open. And I have found that I've had to circle back to my clients to talk to them about how they're affected, and as artists, or I'm currently representing a concert photographer and music journalist, and she's been affected dramatically. She was supposed to take photos at South by and Coachella, and obviously all of that was postponed and canceled. So with her specifically, I was able to put her in touch with Polestar, which is a leading concert industry publication, and she provided a testimonial. I think everyone, just the reason we're here today, is curious as to how this is affecting everybody as a whole. So making my outreach specific to what is currently going on, as you know, bombarded as we are with it. I think that's really allowed me to continue my artist narratives and make, you know, my outreach a little more specific and empathetic to the situation as a whole.
So are you are you crafting your pitches for your clients to be about the coronavirus? Because like you said, they kind of seem, the media just wants to know about that. Like how are you crafting that?
Yes and no, a bit. So Jessica, the concert photographer I was talking to you about, that seemed to be a very natural, you know, transition into, okay, you had all these gigs, now you've lost them. How are you affected? Can we talk about how, you know, how she can contribute to a larger conversation about how music photographers and whatnot are affected by the current situation? So that's been a very natural transition. But you know, it's really, I believe in the magic of the universe of it. And I've currently got an artist who's putting out a song that is about combating loneliness. So like topically, it couldn't be more on point. And I think with that, I don't want to say we're capitalizing on the circumstances, but we understand that people realistically are home and isolated and possibly lonely, you know, like whether you're single or with other people. And I think music right now is kind of needed more than ever, just as Netflix and, you know, any of your stream shows are. So just being super aware of that and giving the music as a gift to the world, because, you know, luckily we can all connect during this time digitally and online. And any way we can contribute to that musically, I think is super important.
Cool. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mark, how about you?
I'm based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and we are pretty much close to kind of lockdown mode, which people are struggling with because for the first time in months the sun is out and everybody wants to be out on the streets and the beaches and stuff. But we're all working from home now. How it's affected my day to day. I mean, I like the routine of just going to the office and just knowing that I'm at work now. And I find that, you know, working on the sofa or that kind of stuff is just, it took a little bit of time to get my flow into that. So now my girlfriend and I, we've set up shop in in the kitchen to kind of keep each other motivated to keep working and not to like decide to go to the sofa at some point. But other than that, I think I'm affected by the fact that artists are now scared as to what's going to happen. So everyone's just being very, very careful and waiting to see where things are going to turn to and what's going to happen. But what I am focusing on a lot more now is to be able to like coach artists on how to maximize their social media to reach more people, because like Marilyn said, everyone's at home and everyone is online all the time at the moment, whether you're working or for your entertainment or so there's actually not a better time to connect with your audience. And if anything, people kind of want some other news other than the chaos that's going on in the world. So yeah, so I mean, like you mentioned, I run a digital agency, and we do everything from make music videos to run ads, to running ads, and everything in between. And the whole production side of making content and stuff like that, that's all on hold. So the focus really is now digital, social media. How do we generate reach? How do we get you more fans? And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the music industry is going to recover after this. I mean, I find it hard to believe that once all of this is over, that everyone's just going to like pick up where they left off. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos to get everything back in order. And I think that the online space is just going to play a huge role in that.
You said the online space will play a huge role in that. You got cut out on my end at the end.
Yeah, I think the online space is gonna play a huge role in the music industry once everything goes back to normal, hopefully, because it's just going to show that your fan base isn't where you necessarily live, and you have the tools to reach them. So why not use that after the whole virus craziness is over.
Right. Yeah. It seems, I mean, we had a chat yesterday about live events with some promoters, some artist managers, some agents. And it seemed what I gathered was it seems like that's going to be the most affected. The online space, the ad space, I mean, you see people doing live streams of their concerts and, people are still on news articles. So the media still seems to still be running, but yeah, same thing. I'm interested to see what that's going to look like for even the ad space. Like, you said that artists are kind of closing down right now and like saying that holding off on some things. Have you seen that they are like pulling their ads, or are they going all in?
It's kind of split. I just got off a call actually with one of the artists I'm running some campaigns for, and she kind of just went all in. She said, "Look, we're stuck at home. No one's getting out. So I'm taking all the money I had saved for this, and that, and we're just going to promote all my existing content, which is all really great stuff that she's really proud of, and is kind of sitting there collecting dust now." So why not? She's like, let's just go all out. Let's just take all the money I've got and let's make the most of this period. And others are just being very careful. Others are thinking maybe they need to buy some better mics for their live streams, for example. So it's kind of split. It's kind of split. I know where my preference goes.
For sure. Yeah. I'm kind of on that boat as well, just kind of going all in. And if I want to try on Artist Collective's ads, I just ran a couple and gotten them down to like 1 cent per like, because everybody's on there and I targeted the world. So I see that as well, because a lot of my clients are like, oh, I don't want to do anything until I know something's happening. But,
Yeah.
like to your point, everybody's at home, they're scrolling, they're going to see an ad and they're going to want to check it out now more than ever because they have the time.
Yeah, and especially if you can connect with them in the correct way. I think now is definitely not a time to be, asking people to take extra steps to follow you or whatever. But if you can connect with somebody on a human level, even though it's on a digital platform, if you can connect the way us humans do in real life, back when we used to be allowed to connect with each other, then you're going to get much better results. You're just going to get much better. Yeah.
Absolutely. I kind of want to, of course, I want to target this at Marilyn here. We had a couple questions yesterday about a publicist, and I kind of pushed them to today because today's the good day for that. Can you just break down like what you do? And because I think there's a lot of unknowns there with a lot of independent artists.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say publicists on a base level are not in control of, but take care of an artist's brand and communicate, I would say, their brand and anything that they have going on to the world. Really in public relations, I have relations with the public. So I'm constantly, communicating and connecting the dots between just what an artist is putting out, whether it's a music release or a tour or whatever they have on the docket. So this is related specifically to music PR, but I take that and I deliver the information to journalists, and I make sure that anyone in the city they're touring, in knows when their show is, all the specific details, secure them previews and or concert reviews. And then, it's my goal always to secure any kind of press around a single and or music release. I think specifically what I've been focused on lately is helping them control the narrative and their story. We kind of live in a time where people want authentic, humanized content. And I think it's really important to get the artist's story out there and try to figure out what they stand for, like what they're involved in outside of music, what they're, if they have a concept album or single, what is that story about, and get that out into the world. Because I feel, and I'm at fault for this too, people are falling in love with the artist as a person for who they are before they even fall in love with the music. And I've done that time and time again. I think a good example for me is Lizzo. I'd never heard her music, but I kept seeing her trending in the media and her Twitter was being talked about. And I really liked who she was. And I loved how down to earth she was. And I started paying attention. And then secondary to me liking her as a person, I checked out the music and happen to like that too. So I think, you know, specifically, not only am I communicating and connecting the dots and securing press placements, but I'm also helping them control their story, because that's always evolving, I think. And specifically with the climate, you know, and I think this is a perfect example now of how, you know, my artists are living their stories now throughout this pandemic, and how that's going to affect and mold, you know, their art moving forward. So, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like a lot of artists, even independent, start on social media. They tell their story. They discover what they value in life, and they connect with their fans. And then a publicist can kind of take it past just maybe social media and into regular media outlets and tell that story and help you craft it a little bit. Would you say that that's correct? Kind of the next level.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think we live in a really great time of, you know, with us all being digitally connected, I feel like everybody is their own personal brand, and we're all, especially younger generations, aware of that and how we're perceived by others online. So yeah, like you said, it's really my job just to refine that and communicate it on a larger scale, and really use press as a tool to, you know, and interviews specifically and Q&As, just to get the story out there and really communicate it on a larger level to make it more visible, but also clearer to an audience, so that, you know, people, so that they become more approachable and people fall in love with who they are.
Right. When would you say somebody is not ready to hire a publicist?
That is a very good question. I would say, you know, these things are subjective, but in my experience, I don't think you're ready to hire a publicist if you don't have a foundation. And by that, it doesn't mean you have to have secured major press placements by yourself, or have toured the world, or have millions of streams. You know, I've actually taken on green artists before who had no releases behind them. That can be more challenging. I will say, as a publicist, it is a little scary to take on artists who are putting out their first single and no one's ever heard of them. But when I have done that in the past, they also had things going on outside of it. You know, like they were publishing a zine and had contributed to a larger political conversation. So there were avenues that I could explore. But I think if you're really just starting out and you're not sure what your story is, or you're not already involved with a larger conversation, I would just start to put out music and see how it's perceived, figure out who you are through those releases. And once you become a little more established and familiar with yourself as an artist, then I think that's a good step toward, you know, hiring a publicist. Because again, people come to me all the time who are not ready for PR, and I'm not going to take their money if they're not. I think one message I do want to get out to artists is that the industry, there are a lot of people who do take advantage of that and will take your money anyway, knowing that they're not going to produce results. So when you're looking for PR, do your homework and make sure, you know, you're partnering with people who have worked with similar artists before, or who have experience pushing similar genres, and who you feel confident can take you on at the moment that you're at in your career.
And I feel like
I've got a quick follow-up question to that, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So what would you say are some really valuable elements for an artist to have to make your job easier, or to make the results more successful? Like what should they bring to the table when they meet you?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I love, and I'm not saying it's super necessary, but I love, like, I talk through examples, so I'll give you an example. Artists who are involved with, say, a political conversation. So it doesn't mean you have to be political, but it helps. Vic Mensa is a good example. He very recently started becoming more outwardly political, and in a time where it's very important for him to be, and he started getting all this press and he was in the news more. I've had artists come to me who were actively involved in LGBTQ rights, or were passionately vegan, you know, like things like that, where it's not only topical, but they can talk about something outside of the music, and hopefully intersperse these conversations. Like, I think it's great when something they stand for is also expressed through their music. So yeah, I don't know. I hope I hope that's a good answer, but it helps. I think depth, you know, people who can really like tap into just what's important to them, who they are.
Yeah.
You know, I think the party's over. I think people are starting to get kind of sick of shallow music, and
Yeah.
music purely as an escape. Unless it's an instrumental. I think like EDM is a total exception. You know, if like dubstep, no lyrics. I think there's a place for that, for people to escape or celebrate. But for the most part, I think if you're delivering lyrics, you should be saying something.
Yeah. I mean, the reason that I ask is because over here in Europe, you know, everybody wants to make it in America, really, right? Maybe that's me generalizing, but if you can get out of Holland and become recognized in the US or the UK or any of the bigger countries, that's often a way to wake up the media in Holland to be like, hey, look, you know, they like me in the US. Why are you guys not promoting me? So there's many artists that I speak to that decide like, hey, I want to make it big in this country, and they go find a publicist in that country to boost their music. And they often come back and they think like, well, yeah, you know, I got on a couple of blogs and this and that, but it didn't quite get me that push that I needed. And that's kind of why I'm asking, because I'd like to give these artists some advice the next time they try to attempt that strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, you are definitely, and it's really interesting to hear your perspective on things. I love that you're overseas and you have experience, you know, with artists who, again, it doesn't necessarily apply here. I think artists here are kind of focused on getting big here. Whereas it's interesting that the artists you're working with are like, well, I'm big over, you know, in the US. So it kind of gives them some leverage in a conversation. But that, again, I think comes back to storytelling. I think you're right. A lot of PR, a lot of these small blogs, they don't generate a larger conversation. They don't generate fan retention. People might see the headline and scroll past it on Facebook, but they don't actually go to your Facebook page and like it. So that's why I think interviews are key. I found a lot more success with radio interviews that are uploaded to YouTube, talk shows, which are obviously of a higher tier, but I think any kind of visual content that's accompanied by, like with the press, is key, because music blogs can be hit or miss. Some of them are struggling to stay alive. So I think, yeah, it really just depends on the kind of press you're giving them. You know, press alone isn't the key to like success.
Yeah, and I think it's key to realize that artists are kind of living in a world where they're giving X amount of money and they're expecting these kind of results. I know, Mark, you and I have talked about that with the services you provide, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't really work like that. Like it really just depends, you know, in the world of Spotify playlists, you know, a lot of those we all know could be fake. So people are promising 10,000 streams for $100. And the world of publicists, you can't really make that guarantee. Like you said, like you can, you know, hit send on some emails and make some phone calls, but if the story doesn't, if they don't think that the story will align with their audience, they're not going to make that story or put that story on their blog or whatever it be. So I think that's the hard part too. The clients that I've had that, you know, have done PR and hasn't really worked out is just because, you know, you just can't guarantee anything. Do you feel like that's kind of a pain point for publicists everywhere?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of scary because, you know, part of what you do is sales too, and you want clients. We all have to eat. So it's a balanced conversation, to be honest, and say, hey, you know, there's an element of uncontrollable circumstances here, and we might not, you know, be able to we can't guarantee press. But that said, like you said, I think that applies to ads too. It's a bit more of a sure shot with ads. I think once you've done so many trial runs and you finally find a formula that works. But again, that takes time. You know, I think with both what me and Mark do, it's kind of about the journey, you know, and the long haul. And sometimes you have to experience a lot of no's and failures and whatnot just to get to where you want to be. So yeah, it can be tough, but you have to stay positive through it, because again, you know, even if you get some no's, they're always going to lead to a yes. There's always a formula or an algorithm that's going to work. It just takes time.
And patience.
And patience. Yes.
Right. And it is a relationship building thing that you have, that a publicist is. Like you build an actual relationship with these contacts at different media outlets, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's all about that too.
Yeah, relationships are key. I will say, and this is advice I think to publicists and artists, even if you're treat every relationship the same. So even if you're working with a blogger who has a blog with 100 likes on Facebook, treat them how you would the editor of Billboard or Forbes, because these people are building their careers too. And in 2 years, they could be the editor of Pitchfork, or they could be, working at a larger publication, and they'll remember you for that. So I think that's super important too, that we're kind of like, we're all in this together kind of mentality.
Right. I just thought of a follow-up question. What advice could you give some of these artists that, aren't ready to hire a publicist, but they still kind of want to do that type of work on their own? Where can they start?
Yeah, that's tough. It's really tough because there's so much involved. But I think a good piece of advice for me would be to do your homework. A cool tool that Spotify offers is, like, for most of us, if you go to your Spotify profile and you click on fans also like, it'll give you a list of artists that fans who like your music, it's likely that they've also visited the other artists that are listed. And Google those artists and see who's written about those artists. So if you are similar to like a Chance the Rapper type or something, I mean, this is like a high tier example, but Google Chance the Rapper and who wrote about him. And if it's a Pitchfork article, click on it. Who's the journalist? Click on the journalist. See what they've written about. Look them up on LinkedIn. See what else they've produced. And I feel like if people are writing about an artist who's similar to you, they're going to be more receptive to your music. So making your outreach super specific, I think, is definitely key to success, because you don't want to be a rapper sending your music to a journalist who only covers country. I mean, that's like a very, generalized example, but I think specificity is key. And then just, respecting them as humans, when you reach out, being very down to earth and transparent and offering them everything they need. So your socials, a music link, biography, approved press photos. I think photos are really important. Yeah, and just persevering, again, patience.
And what do you think the best way to deliver material to someone who does not take unsolicited material, or I guess unsolicited emails? How would one approach that?
Yeah, that can be tough too. For me, I try to respect that. If they specifically say we do not take unsolicited material, then of course, I think it's important to be a little creative in your outreach. If they don't though, even if you think it's a long shot, shoot them an email. Like, I have literally half of my relationships are with people I've never met in person, and I reached out to them cold. Was just, outwardly just being like, hey, I respect your work, and referencing their work. But I think LinkedIn is an underused tool with artists. For artists, I think it's important to, just start up a personal profile, mention that you're an artist, create your company page as an artist, and reach out to these people and ask them. I've, reached out to people and been like, hey, I'm Marilyn Rellis at Present PR. I have a musician here who I think you would like based on your musical taste. Would you mind if I email you? And 9 times out of 10, they'll get back to you and they'll say no, or they'll say yeah. And that way you're kind of respecting their wishes.
Right. Yeah, I agree. LinkedIn is a tool that I think artists and just everybody doesn't really use that much. They have I think it's 30 days, 30-day trial for their pro, and it allows you to send, I think it's called is it iMessage or iChat, a free iChat to anybody. So if you have like a release coming up or something you really want that PR push, do the 30-day trial. It's free. It's kind of expensive afterwards, but if you're getting results, I recommend it. Reach out to people just like Marilyn said, and cancel the free trial when it's done if you want. I think it's a really good tool. I've landed a bunch of playlists and a bunch of cool contacts for our industry chats just from LinkedIn. So I agree. That's great.
Awesome.
All right, Mark, I want to shift to you real fast. We kind of touched on this in your intro, but I'd love to go even deeper on talking about during this time, everybody's home. There's not really any shows going on. So is it good? Is it a good time for an ad campaign?
I think it's always a good time for an ad campaign. It's it's weird because now we're going to talk in the context of the crisis that we're in. But what I really like about the digital platforms is you can build a fan base with whatever budget you've got available, and you can build towards any fan base that you want to grow towards. And well, to answer your question, I think, yeah, it's a great time to run campaigns now because everybody's doing the same live streams, but no one is distinguishing themselves in a way that stands out. So what if you can kind of introduce yourself to a fan base first in a more subtle way, build your narrative towards a live stream. I think there's a lot of potential to be gained in running ad campaigns in general, but particularly at this time because there's just a lot of people at home.
Absolutely. Are there certain kinds of, not live streams, but ads for your clients that have been working really well? Like maybe the client you said she went all in.
Yeah.
Is it like video versus this versus a live stream?
It's for the music industry, it's 100% video, because if you're trying to promote your music to me and you do that with a picture, how am I going to know what your music's like? So step number one, always a video. The other step that I really recommend is just keep it simple. Look, I make digital content as well, and I love making expensive music videos. Like that's how I started in this industry, because I just had a passion for that. But the reality now is that, what if you can take a majority of that budget that you had for your music video and spend that on reaching fans? And then once they engage and once they're interested, and once Marilyn's got all these blogs excited about you or these platforms, then go make a fancy music video to spread out to all these people. But yeah, just keep it always video and keep it simple.
Let's say I'm an artist and I have $50 to my name, and I'm like, I just released a single on Spotify and everywhere, and I want to throw an ad together. I know it's kind of a generalized question, but I have $50. How should I use that?
Make a video. Do it of a whole song. Don't do a little teaser, because we're past that phase of teasing people online. Mm-hmm. Give me a full song, and just go on Google and just type in how to build a campaign on Facebook or on Instagram, and just try it. Like, yeah, you're not going to make that $50 back, but you're going to reach more people. And even if you get like 10 people really excited, then at least like, hey, this makes sense. If I get better at running ads, if I understand better what my audience is doing, if I get feedback from my audience about what my music is like, or what they liked or what they didn't like, or any of that kind of stuff. This is what I kind of discussed with you when we called last, that you're going to generate data, and the data is more than how much did it cost me for a click, or how many people did I reach. No, you can dive deeper, and you can see who's actually engaged, how much attention did they pay, where are they from. Like one of my artists, when we ran her first campaign a couple of months ago, the results that came back from places like Italy and Canada just shocked her, and people started buying CDs. It was like during the Christmas period, and people started buying her CDs off of her web shop, which was collecting dust for ages. So you're gonna develop at least knowledge about your fan base, what works, what doesn't, who are they, where are they. Take some time, learn the absolute basics of running some ads, and throw your $50 at it and see what happens.
Right. So
or call me.
Exactly. So data, I agree. I think getting that data from people is a lot of times more important than just sending them to a place where they can just stream your music and then forget about you. So do you recommend like starting an ad where there's some kind of funnel system, meaning, you get their email address and then it gets them to a next level? Do you recommend something like that?
It depends on what level you're at. And the example that I always like to use is You know, if you're sitting at a bar having a drink and some random comes up to you and goes, "Hey, I'm a lot of fun. Here, give me your number so we can go for a drink tomorrow." You're gonna be like, "Well, hang on a second. Who are you? Like, I don't know you. I don't want your number. I don't want you to call me." Whereas if this person made an effort to introduce themselves and was polite and wasn't pushy, and that introduction grew over time, and you built the relationship, then it makes sense to ask people for them to take a step or make an effort to grow in the relationship. You know, everybody starts off as a stranger, and if you can build the relationship like we do in, you know, like human to human, if you can build the relationship over time, then that stranger becomes a friend, and then that friend is prepared to do a lot more for you than the stranger is. So if you're starting out, I don't recommend, you know, putting a, you know, follow me on Spotify or my new singles out and targeting that to a cold audience, because they're just not going to care.
Right. Or what I see a lot is the pre-save. It's like you're sending you're sending a pre-save my single where there's no like preview of the single itself, and to a cold audience that are just like, who are you? I don't even know who you are, let alone want to pre-save something and put in my information.
Yeah, and just to touch on that side of things, you know, a lot of the artists that I've worked with, they go, okay, cool. So when after we've introduced ourselves, when do we send them to Spotify? When do we get them to do this? And it's like, why are you so desperate to get them on Spotify for that stream or for that follow? The reality is Spotify doesn't pay you that much anyway. So why would you send people off of the platform that they're comfortable on to be on the platform that you want them to raise the numbers, which don't really mean much?
That's why.
to do what? You lose them. You lose that contact, right? Because you're communicating with them on a platform like Facebook or Instagram, and then you send them to Spotify, and then there's no way to connect back, and there's no way to link the data to see what they're actually up to on Spotify. Yeah, there's Spotify for artists, but how do I know that you clicked on this video, you watched 50% of that, and then from there you clicked on my link to go to Spotify, and then you listen to my whole album? There's no way to measure that last part. So what's the point in sending them over? I still really believe in the sense of discovery, right? Like we all have this excitement when you discover an artist that's got like 2,000 views or 2,000 streams or whatever, right? Like something very little, and you discover them and you're like, whoa, this guy's amazing, or this girl's incredible. And you want to share that with your friends, right? And there's this kind of like this healthy ego that's like, oh yeah, I knew about that artist way before everyone knew, right? And that's that sense of discovery that you kind of need to give to people to go on by themselves, because that creates a stronger relationship with you and the fan.
Yeah, and I think
one last thing.
Go ahead.
Nobody likes being told what to do, right? Like when somebody tells you, oh, you should do this, you're like, oh, well, I don't want to. I'll do it later. Whereas when it's out of your own choice, it's so much more valuable.
Right. I think it's interesting you brought up that ego point, because you were presenting like, why are they so eager to send them to Spotify to show the numbers? Honestly, this is what I believe. I think it is those numbers, because Spotify's built a platform where they're showing actively the monthly listeners, they're showing the streams, which pretty much like Apple Music doesn't show you how many streams there are. So I think it kind of comes back to that ego piece. They want to see it working. They want to see those numbers. But in the end, like what you said, what's hard to wrap their minds around is that fan relationship. There's not really necessarily any numbers there to like see. So they don't, when they don't see it working, aka the numbers on Spotify, they don't think that the ads are working, even though they're building a relationship. So it's tough.
Yeah, and it's you know, this kind of like I guess you can call it the classic, you know, formula in the music industry that, you know, you get yourself 1,000 really engaged, super excited fans that are constantly excited about everything you do. You know, if you can build a relationship to a point where you can convince these people to support you with merch, with shows, with tickets, whatever you're offering, if you can get 1,000 of those to spend $100 a year on you, that's a pretty good turnover, right? That's a turnover that a lot of artists can only dream of.
Right. Yeah. And so, you know, instead of chasing those empty numbers that they might say, oh, you know what, I'll follow this artist. And then you never see them again. And, you know, with all the social media algorithms being all funky nowadays, it's much more important to build that relationship. And, you know, that's what Marilyn does as well. It's a relationship building, just like your example. You would walk up to somebody and say, hey, will you marry me? She's not sending unsolicited emails all day to people. No, she's building relationships with, you know, Billboard and Forbes or whatever. And it's the same thing, just in a different side of it.
I was just on a call with the manager before I jumped onto this with you guys. And he told me that his artist doesn't like communicating with their fan base on or responding to the engaged fan base on the social media channels. And I said to him, well, how come? He's like, yeah, it's like an ego thing. And I told him, well, when this artist gets off stage at a show and all these people go up to him and they want to get him pictures and shake his hand and stuff, does he just walk away and ignore them? And he's like, no, he gets in the pictures. I'm like, well, it's the same thing, right? Like, it's like social etiquette. Like, why would you do it in real life and then ignore them on online?
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. No, that's super true. And to chime in on this, like, proves, like you said, why all of this is intertwined. You know, like, to build those relationships, you build them through the story, and people fall in love with who, you know, you are. And those are the people to show up at your shows, versus you hear the stories about all these kids who have millions of streams on Spotify, but then they use that to book a tour and nobody shows up to the show.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So I completely agree. Mm-hmm.
Marilyn, what do you think the pushback is, if there is any, with artists really accepting the fact that they should share their story, like, instead of just being about the music?
Definitely. It requires vulnerability. I definitely feel like it's a scary step, you know, to share your story. And also, I will say, there have been many artists very successful at sharing a made up story. So there is the option to, whereas now everyone wants something a bit more humanized, so I don't know how effective that would be now. But if you don't feel comfortable sharing your own, which I would encourage that first, as scary as it is, you can also, I mean, you are an alias. Like, unless you are performing under your legal name, there is wiggle room for you to be someone who, or to be a version of yourself and just maximize that version instead of putting just your whole authentic self out there. It's a scary step. And I understand why a lot of artists don't necessarily feel compelled to do it or are a little hesitant, but just know you can have a little fun with it. You know, when I was an artist, I totally did that. My alias was very much I don't want to say a fraction of who I was, but I added a little bit in there that were components of myself, but I wasn't giving my full self away because it was kind of fun to play that character. Can you explain? I'm really intrigued now. If you don't mind sharing more, I would love to hear more about what you did. Totally. I have an acting background. I went to school for acting and performed off Broadway for a bit. So I think that was a very natural thing to fall into. Whereas, you know, so I think just as actors, you're constantly playing different roles. And so when I became a recording artist, I was like, oh, okay, so what's this role going to be? Like, this is exciting because I can write my own script now. So I can figure out like how, like who I want to communicate into the world and how I want to be perceived. And, you know, at that time I was in hip hop. I was a rapper for a little bit, as weird as that is to admit, but I did that for 6 years. I wrote 3 albums and booked 2 regional tours for myself. And through doing so, I feel like I gave myself a voice where I was myself. I think in hip hop specifically, there's a lot more need for you to be authentic because you shouldn't pretend to be someone you're not. But that said, I was able to kind of be a stronger version of myself, or at least let that part of myself shine more than I let it in real life. So yeah, I definitely feel like there's room for that as well, whether it's you being, you know, getting your sadness out through your music or your frustrations or angst, you know, about the world, if things, the pandemic's making you mad. So like write about that and let, you know, like channel, it's such a healthy way to channel your anger or negative energy, really. And because we're all feeling it. So it's an important time to make art and just realize, you know, you're putting yourself into it, but the way you communicate it can also be, you can have some fun with it and, you know, be a character.
Yeah, I think
I guess it's,
go ahead.
I guess it's like, it's a level of showmanship, right? Like, I think when I think back to some of the artists that I grew up with, like some of them, well, okay, I didn't grow up with Kiss, but I do remember Kiss. And I mean, that is like, you don't see anyone like that around anymore, right? So you could develop a character and you can create a story for that. And yeah, you could definitely roll with that. I think that's really good advice, actually.
Yeah,
Cool.
Marilyn Manson was the one I was thinking of, because he
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
really like that. That was his way of showing like rebellion and all these other parts of himself. But he didn't do crazy shit like that in real life.
Slipknot's another one.
Yeah, Slipknot, absolutely. Yeah, you didn't really we didn't even know who they were for forever. You know, I read an article. Side note: there's 9 of them. Those of you that don't know Slipknot. I used to love Slipknot back in the day, but I read an article that they were one of the top grossing touring acts because you didn't know who was who. So most of them, it was just new people like the Blue Man Group. So they were able to tour more often because they only needed that one front man. Technically, his name was Corey.
Wow.
So I thought that was crazy because they all wore masks and you didn't know who they were.
Exactly. You know. Or you could animate yourself. You could just pull a gorillas and like, you know, and just hide behind. And I don't even want to say you're hiding. It's just like a creative choice to just be a cartoon character. And, you know, I love that. I think that's very widely accepted too.
Yeah. It's art, you know, have fun with it. But
exactly,
I think it is important to have a good grasp of that story that you're trying to tell. Because, you know, I'm sure that lines can get crossed on who you really are and things like that. So just have a good grasp on the story you're trying to portray to the media or to your ads or to your fans, whatever. This one was just a kind of fun question topic I wanted to talk about, because I have been seeing in terms of news articles, not even specifically related to the music industry, but I have been seeing, you know, some, you know, there's false claims out there about the virus, and artists are kind of using this in a quirky way. I guess my question is, I want to pick your guys' brains on where you think the line is between it being clickbaity and being false claims and false information, I guess, and, you know, having fun with it and just trying to kind of ride this wave of, you know, what's hot in the media, if that makes sense.
Ooh. That's a really good question.
That's a tough question, Evan.
Sorry.
Can we pass on this one?
A total pass?
No.
You know, I think you know, you're right. We live in a really confusing time of fake news, of, you know, people only reading headlines. That's a big personal pet peeve of mine. I think if you're going to voice a strong opinion about a subject, you should read the entire article prior to doing so. And I think as artists, you have a reputation to maintain, so make sure you are educated about whatever you're talking about. But that said, you know, yeah, it's a delicate balance between capitalizing on the virus to, you know, like control the current narrative, but also being sensitive to it because it's a very serious issue. So I would always keep that in mind. You know, if you're going to talk about it, don't pull what was her name? Vanessa Hudgens or whatever, who, you know, came out with something very insensitive, because it's negatively affecting people. So yeah, it's weird. I think this is a 2-part question between clickbait headlines and I think how to take the virus seriously, you know, and ride this wave in like a respectful, you know, tasteful way.
Yeah, I guess my take on this is just don't trick people. I mean, if you're gonna run an ad for your music and write, we've discovered the cure to corona and that it links to your music video, like that's a I don't want to say it,
but what if you create a song called "The Coronavirus Cure"?
I think unless the lyrics actually describe what the cure is and everyone can use it, I don't think it's very ethical for you to do that.
Right.
But look, I think you know, once again, building relationships starts with starting conversations, and And if you have something in your music that could trigger a conversation, then put that in your headline, but don't trick people into clicking on it because it's going to get you more views or streams or whatever. Do it because you actually want to start a conversation. Like, I mean, how many artists have actually gone out and said, please let us know who's been affected by the coronavirus. We'd love to write you a song, something like that. Like something along those lines is a lot more of a sensitive way to kind of open the conversation about the situation we're in.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one that I had on here that I ended up taking off, but we definitely have some times I want to pick your brain from the PR perspective. Can you explain more about like every company's obligatory email about this virus? You know what I'm talking about? We all have like our emails like explaining their take on it. Can you kind of explain from a PR perspective why everybody's doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And also just human to human, I'm going to shift this way because we're all working from home and my fiance is walking behind me. So I'm going to give him some privacy. Yeah, these are things we're all currently dealing with. There, is that a good background?
That's a cool background.
Sweet, thanks. Yeah, so the influx of coronavirus related emails, my take on them, I think they're necessary. I think, there are certain people we all need to hear from. My co-working space is a good example. I was wondering whether or not I was going to have to pay that monthly fee next month, how they're reacting to it, are they closing down? So I think, those emails were, and I hope we're talking about the same thing. I think those emails are necessary, but it's also been a lot. I definitely feel like, especially with South by Southwest being canceled, I don't know how many of you watching plan to go and how many of you RSVP'd to a bunch of events like I did, but I'm pretty sure I got 45 emails one day of just like, hey, South by was canceled, so therefore their event was canceled, and just the influx was kind of overwhelming. So I think, in this time, again, it goes back to being tasteful, and just if you have an event that you had to cancel, or you're running a conference or anything, life is in flux right now. I think it's important to inform people what's going on, but to respect them and don't flood them with a bunch of emails because they're already getting CNN alerts and all kinds of, a crazy amount of information right now. So.
Right. I think where I was going with that was kind of what I don't see any emails from any artists about this. And I think that's interesting. I saw it as I'm getting emails from all these companies because they're trying to, stay strong with their values, their company values. They're trying to keep you informed on, the things that you bought or the subscriptions that you have and how they're handling it. But I think that's the biggest thing missing in the music industry, independent at least, is that fan connection that we've been talking about. I haven't seen one email saying, hey, I hope you guys are all safe. We have a free stream on Bandcamp to, something to just say, hey, I understand what you're going through. I'm sorry. I haven't seen any of those. And it's a little disappointing, to be honest. So I just kind of wanted to open that conversation up on the biggest companies in the world are sending massive emails explaining what COVID-19 is and why it's important and things like that. I mean, even an artist could send an email saying, wash your hands, love you guys, you know what I mean? Something, but I haven't seen a single one. So I think that's interesting.
I think my take on this is that these companies have built relationships with the people that they're emailing, whether it's, whether they use their service or they offer information or whatever. Like there's a reason that these people are receiving these emails because there's a relationship with that company. And I think a lot of artists don't have that relationship built out. A lot of artists use their email mailings to announce how amazing they've been doing or what they've got coming up. And this goes back to the whole social media thing I talk about, that it's just such a great platform to very simply on a regular basis build that relationship, and you're gonna benefit from that in the long term a lot more than check out my new download or my new stream.
Right.
Yeah. I would agree. It's a really good idea, and I'm glad you kind of planted that seed for whoever's watching, because it is, I think artists need to remind themselves that they are a business, and it's important to, even if they don't have that relationship yet, maybe now's the time to start and just reach out and be like, hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but clearly we're all going through a tough time. If you need some music to listen to in your downtime, you know, here it is. And I think instead they're taking to maybe social media, which is also good, but cherishing those relationships in your mailing list is super important. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been really heavy into text marketing, and I've had a amazing experience with it. I've got about 200 on my text list, and I'm making sure that I'm making sure to add value first. And I think it's a really cool tool that artists can kind of do that as well, because people are definitely looking at their emails, but they're texting more than that. So the open rates are great, but again, I don't want them to do it and just say, here's a new single. Like you said, here's how amazing I'm doing. Have a connection. You know, you're not that big. You're not Drake level yet where you can't talk to every single fan. Like, let's be honest, like you need to have those connections. So I definitely think email lists in general is a very underused tool. A lot of my clients they're scared to send out an email because they don't want them to unsubscribe. I've gotten that a lot. I'm like, wait, what? But you're not using it. If you don't use it, you lose it. Isn't that the saying? So send something out, make those connections.
And why would that upset you? Why don't you just focus on the people that are actually into who you are and what you do? Like, focus your energy into that instead of trying to convert someone that doesn't really care.
Absolutely. I think that comes back to the vulnerability. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick point about the whole text platforms. I'm totally with you on that. We've been building chatbots for a little while as well, and the more I read up on like the directions that platforms are taking in with text, and the talks of Facebook merging the Instagram chat, the Messenger, and WhatsApp into one. That's crazy. I mean, the fact that you can use one platform and communicate with really short, simple text, like we would send to our friends, like, hey, hope you have a good day, like, what are you up to? Like, really simple, short messages like this. It's a really, really exciting front to be developing your fan base on and building that relationship there.
Right. And a lot of that, what'll happen a lot of times is, even though you're not sending them a message saying, hey, go and listen to my music, and you're just sending like an automated message like what you're talking about through Facebook or text messaging, and you're just having a conversation, you're now top of mind for them. Oh man, I forgot about his new song. I'm gonna go check him out on Spotify.
Yeah.
That happens even without asking for it. So again, fan engagement.
And like you said, if you send out to your 200 people saying, hey guys, stay safe, don't forget to wash your hands, peace and love, it's really simple, and that's gonna take you all of what, 30 seconds.
Right. Yeah. It's been really great. I use a company called Blossom IM. Doing a chat with him in a couple weeks, talking about how artists can use it specifically. I've used a couple others in the past, like Superphone. There's a bunch of them out there. So
the Ryan Leslie one. Yeah.
So definitely get on that. Well, cool. I'm ready to open up the floor to some Q&A again. If you're down for it, I'll bring you in on the video and you can kind of chat with us, ask your question, things like that. Otherwise, just throw it in the Q&A box and I will announce it. I think I got a couple in here already. All right, my guy Ross Roby wants to ask Mark, in mitigating the slight dip in streaming, is your conversion rate from socials to DSPs increasing at all?
Yeah, once again, this goes back to the point that I made earlier, that why is that the metric that we're looking at? Why are we looking at the conversion rate from your social media to your DSPs? Like, why are we not just focusing on the people that are on the platform that we're active on? And why are we not looking at engagement time? Why are we not looking at how they interact with you and build on that? Because I guarantee you, if you build on that and somebody buys a physical CD or an LP or piece of merchandise, that's probably going to make you more money than if that person listens 5,000 times to that one song you're promoting.
Right. So I guess to flip that, what metric would you, I think you said a couple in there, but just to reiterate, what metric would you say to focus on more?
It depends what platform you want to grow on. The metrics that I really like is a retention rate. You know, how long is somebody watching? Because the person that watches 50% of your song is a lot more valuable than the person that watches 10 seconds of your song. So why not grow your fan base based on that metric instead of, you know, the value that you get by sending people to Spotify?
Right. Cool. Got a couple. This one's just, did you start earlier today? No, we started at 12 p.m. Central Time. You say you're in Ireland. 6 p.m. You thought it was 6 p.m. your time? Yeah. I'll send you all the info if you want to watch the replay. I'll get that uploaded as soon as I can, Kaylee. Michael, did you want me to bring you in? I'm gonna try.
Hey,
how you doing, guys?
Hey, Michael, what's up, man?
Hey, Michael.
Thanks for taking the time and talking.
Yeah.
How many times? Yeah. So just got a couple questions on in total of everything. I manage a couple of artists of my own out here in Chicago, and I'm creating like a sort of marketing system where it's more of like a funnel theory, and where it's going from streaming platforms to their website to maybe, you know, a music video or YouTube, where it's constant cycle of having some content to be put out. Going to where we're talking about like pitching new ideas, or like how there's a new change in how you were talking about this, Mark, back like an hour ago, how there's going to be a new like way of systems changing, where there's going to be a whole different shift of where viewers are going and actually listening to this product. So like a good example is unrelated to music, but like in movies where less people are going to the theaters, now you can bring on like shows onto or movies onto Netflix, and there's going to be more of a pull onto that side, where slowly but surely maybe like the idea of a theater is going to be more of a nostalgic moment instead of an actual way to produce and like get people to sit down and do that. So in terms of the music side, in that funnel theory where I'm talking about, how can I like push that way where I'm changing how the viewer is really receptive in terms of like when they're listening to that music, we pitch a story. How can they turn around and be like, this is where I feel I should invest or put my time and energy into this?
sorry, this is your questions from the perspective of
a fan consumer. Yeah. Okay. So like because we're creating that funnel theory. So I'm just trying to think where like it's a constant pitch of content. So if I'm always going in and trying to get the people to see that, like, again, we're all human. We're trying to help the community as a whole. Both my artists, one of my artists was homeless last year. And so like pitching that idea, he was making music in the backseat of their car, and, you know, like just got into a house and went couch hopping and got to that place where it's like, I see that the human aspect is there. So in that term of like, where can I implement that in a PR consumer standpoint where like the fans understand that this isn't just like a way for us to eat, you know?
Let me see if I understood your question.
Ooh.
So what you're saying, how do I get my fans to sort of go from one level of our relationship onto the next? Is that kind of what you mean?
In that essence. Yeah.
Okay. So just start by giving value. Value is anything from just sharing music to sharing stories to sharing your narrative or your artist's narrative. So always start with that. And like, I don't know what your funnel is or what kind of setup you've got, and you know, maybe we can jump on a call together later and have a little think about that. But what it comes down to is if you can if you can build the relationship with the fan like you would with a stranger that becomes a friend, if you can build it without asking too much from them, without expecting them to take certain steps, without trying to make a sales pitch to get them to follow here or buy this or buy that, then and your funnel is built correctly, then you're gonna it's called a funnel for a simple reason, right? Like, you're getting rid of the people that aren't interested and you're focusing on the ones that are. And then over time, that the pool of people that are interested is just going to get bigger and bigger. And those are the ones that you can kind of transcend them to the next level of the relationship. I mean, there's, the example that you used of, the movies in the cinema, and that they're also on Netflix at the moment. Like, I think that over time, the cinema is going to be going to a live show, and Netflix is going to be the subscription that you have with that artist. And the subscription could be as simple as following them on Facebook or whatever, but it could also go to another level. And I've seen a lot of artists do this very successfully, where they have like a membership. They're like, hey, sign up to my membership. It's $5, $10, $20, $50 a month, and this is what you get per package. And that's a lot more work to make all of that work, and it requires a lot more time and effort from the artist to stay involved with the fan base, because these kind of subscriptions do not work if you don't have a relationship with your fans. This is not going to work if you're telling a cold audience to spend $50 a month on you. It's just not going to work, not even $5. So yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because we have the one of them obtains fans really easily, where they're both Chicago artists. One's from Detroit, so going back into it, one of them has that push where Chicago really follows them a lot, and the other has that a little problem where they're not getting the same outreach, or people aren't accepting them, where we then branch out to other areas besides Chicago. Do you know what I'm saying? You follow me?
Why are you talking about running ads as well?
Well, I'm putting in some money in advertising and digital marketing campaigns. So that's going to be starting within the next quarter, where like we were supposed to go to the studio and all that stuff, but then unfortunately Corona hit, so we didn't get to make those demos or anything like that. So we had to backtrack our project. And with the marketing company that I was working, we had to really take a step back and digest everything, and then go to another angle for us to start moving. But it was, like in the sense of advertising, where we're pitching that story, people are hearing from it and they are retaining that information.
No, sorry, but my question is, why are you focusing on 2 cities?
Well, I'm not really, I'm really more focusing on just getting people to listen and to hear the story. Not really like, the music is always going to be there regardless. Like, music's going to be a thing where it's, as soon as it's on the internet, it's going to be there forever. So it's more really just putting out that like, this is happening in our view of the world, and like our artists are pushing their truths out, and how they're being receptive to the audience that they're showing. So where we're not really focusing on major cities, but more just focusing on getting people to hear our side.
Just tell your story, figure out your narrative, run with that without being salesy. And I think you do, if you do that for a little while with a variety of songs, and when you run ads, focus on the US. Don't focus on just 2 cities, focus on the whole of the US, or even take some of the bigger countries in Europe, Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, and just see who responds, because I believe there's a fan, at least one fan for every artist in the world, no matter how good or how bad you are. There's going to be somebody that's into what you do. You just have to find them, and I really think you find them by just being humble as an artist and building relationships through conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I've been in, me personally, I've been in the game for like 4 or 5 years now. In the beginning, I would always try and do that sales, where we're just constantly trying to pitch sales, and I really got away from that. And now I'm more focusing, like you said, on that human connection of pitching their story and really trying to connect the audience, you know.
I think you're on the right track if you keep that train of thought.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Cool. That was cool. Anybody else? Well, there's one. Ryan just said, so woman on LinkedIn who has a great tutorial developing a personal brand. Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely a good tool just all around for connecting with people. And, you know, that's where a lot of the, you know, media outlets and I guess industry professionals are going to be living, because they want, it's the Facebook business almost, you know. So I think it is a really good place for opportunities and learning more. So check that out, and you try the pro version for free. Well, cool. Do we have any other questions in here last minute? You don't have to jump in here. You can just put them in the Q&A and we can attack them. But if that's everything, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up. I really appreciate your guys' time. Just want to take this time, if you want to access the replays and you want some more tutorials, walkthroughs, you want to join more of these chats as we go forward, join our membership, artistcollect.com/industry chat. You can sign up for free. Check it out. And we just launched the podcast version, where it's going to be snippets audio. If you're a podcast person, you don't care so much about the video or the other content, you can pretty much listen to that everywhere podcasts are. iTunes, it's still pending. I think it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for that to process, but anchor.fm/industry chat. I think, was there another question up in here? No. Cool. Real quick about tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be it's day 5. Is about how artist managers are handling this. I've got a really dope lineup. I've got Sam, who's the co-founder of a management company in Nashville. Vanessa is an independent AR. I think she's out of New York. Randy Nichols, who I think is in here right now, is an artist manager and advisor for bands in town. He manages Under Oath, who I used to, that's like a super fan from back in the day. And I have got Rick Barker, who used to manage Taylor Swift, popping in here to kind of chat about what managers are doing to instruct their artists through this pandemic. So I really hope that you guys can join us for that. But Mark, Marilyn, I really appreciate you. I think that's all the time that we have. Any final words about what you guys got going on, how they can contact you if they need PR or an ad campaign?
Definitely. Yeah, thanks for having us. This is a really good chat. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Mark. I learned a lot from you today too. So I'm excited for all the connections to be made. As far as how to find me goes, my company is Present PR. Present as in living in the present. So it's PRESENT. And on Instagram, I'm Present Media PR, and then Present PR everywhere else. And again, I'm Marilyn Rellis. Reach out to me anytime. Like really, I think I try to make myself available and approachable. So if like a PR related question or anything comes up, find me on LinkedIn. I do see my name is spelled actually like Marilyn Manson, MARILYN. So if you're seeing it, yeah, if you want to look for me, there's not a lot of Marilyns around anyway, so I should be an easy find. But yeah, thank you again.
No problem.
Yeah, and thanks again, Evan. This was a lot of fun. I really love talking about this subject because I'm very passionate about it, and I know it's promotion for artists is just so important. So many people go into studios, spend so much time and money and effort, and then they don't do the right promotion, and it's a real shame. So thank you for giving us this platform. Yeah, so my company is Rockstone Creatives, and rockstonecreatives.com. You can go to the website, you can see all the stuff we do, and on the social media promo page at the bottom, you can book in a free 15-minute chat to see if I can help you into the right direction with some advice, or if we can work together. And yeah, find me on Instagram, Mark Bulas. Rockstone Creatives is also the Instagram for the company. That's it. Thanks very much, guys.
Cool. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day. Stay
Yes.
safe, wash your hands, all that stuff.
The best advice of the day. Thanks,
See
you guys.
Thanks again.
See you guys. Bye-bye.